The desperate signal. Commander Sarah was reviewing mining reports from the outer colonies when the emergency beacon pierced through normal communications. The signal came from beyond the edge of human space, carrying a frequency pattern that made her blood run cold. It wasn't human. The bridge of the exploration vessel Intrepid fell silent as the alien transmission played through their speakers. The voice was melodic, almost musical, but the desperation in it transcended species barriers. Sarah's translation software worked frantically to decode the message, producing text that made her lean forward in her command chair. "This is Harmony Singer of the Coalition. We send this message to any spacefaring civilization that might receive it. Our worlds are dying. The Devourers have come and we cannot stop them. They consume everything, our cities, our people, our very planets. We have fought for 3 cycles, but our weapons are useless against their technology. Please, if anyone receives this message, we are willing to share all our knowledge, all our resources in exchange for aid. We do not wish to die forgotten in the void." Sarah's tactical officer, Lieutenant Martinez, looked up from his console with wide eyes. "Commander, the signal is coming from the drift, about 40 light-years from here. Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures in that direction." "What kind of signatures?" Sarah asked, already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. "Multiple stellar masses being displaced. Whatever's happening out there, it's big enough to affect gravity on a galactic scale." Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, the ship's, stepped forward from her station. "Commander, we've never encountered the before, but from what I can analyze from their transmission, they're clearly a peaceful species. Their language patterns suggest high emotional intelligence and strong social bonds." Sarah nodded grimly. The Intrepid was just one exploration ship with a crew of 200, hardly equipped for a military engagement. But the desperation in that alien voice had struck something deep in her human soul. Earth's own history was filled with moments when extinction seemed certain, when desperate people had called out for help that never came. "Martinez, plot a course for the drift, maximum safe speed." "Commander," Dr. Reeves looked surprised. "We should contact Earth Command first, shouldn't we? Get proper military support." Sarah stood up, her decision already made. "Doctor, by the time we send a message to Earth and wait for a fleet to be assembled, these will be dead. Sometimes you have to do what's right, not what's safe." As the Intrepid changed course, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were flying toward something that would change humanity forever. The universe had just shown them that they weren't alone, and their new neighbors were dying. The journey to the drift took 6 days at maximum warp. During that time, more transmissions came through, each one weaker than the last. The translation software had improved with each message, painting a clearer picture of this desperate situation. They were an aquatic species, their cities built in the vast oceans of water worlds. They had achieved space travel through biotechnology, growing their ships rather than building them. Their entire civilization was based on harmony and cooperation, which made them completely unprepared for the ruthless efficiency of their attackers. The Devourers, as they called them, were something out of humanity's worst nightmares. They were a machine intelligence that consumed entire worlds to fuel their expansion. They showed no mercy, took no prisoners, and left nothing but stripped, lifeless rocks in their wake. When the Intrepid finally dropped out of warp at the edge of the system, the crew was stunned into silence. Where long-range sensors had detected 12 planets, only 7 remained. 5 world-sized chunks of debris marked the locations where entire civilizations had once thrived. "My God," whispered Martinez, "they're strip-mining planets." On the main screen, massive mechanical constructs the size of space stations were systematically dismantling the remaining worlds. They moved with perfect efficiency, their drilling arms and harvesting beams reducing ancient continents to component atoms in minutes. But they hadn't given up. Their bioships, looking more like giant sea creatures than spacecraft, darted between the devourer machines like minnows attacking whales. Their weapons left beautiful, flowering explosions of light against the dark hulls of their enemies, but they might as well have been throwing flowers at a hurricane. Sarah watched a group of ships sacrifice themselves to save a single transport vessel carrying refugees. The transport's bioluminescent hull pulsed with what could only be a message of gratitude before diving toward one of the outer planets, desperate to evacuate more civilians. "Tactical analysis, Martinez. What are we looking at?" Lieutenant Martinez's hands flew over his console. "The Devourer ships are massive, Commander. The smallest ones are 3 kilometers long. Their hull composition appears to be some kind of adaptive metal that's absorbing the weapon's fire. And those harvesting beams, he paused, running more calculations. They're converting matter directly into energy. That's theoretically impossible with our understanding of physics. Dr. Reeves had been analyzing the bioships. Commander, their vessels are incredible. They're literally alive. I'm detecting neural networks, circulatory systems, even what appears to be decision-making centers. But they're dying out there. Their weapons are designed for defense against similar organic threats, not these machines. Sarah made her decision. Open a channel to the fleet. Channel open, Commander. This is Commander Sarah of the human vessel Intrepid. Ships, we received your distress call. We're here to help. The response came almost immediately. The voice was the same one from the original transmission, but now it carried a note of desperate hope. Human vessel, we do not know your species, but you have answered our call. I am Harmony Singer. Can you truly help us? Our weapons cannot penetrate their hulls. Sarah looked at her tactical display. The Intrepid carried standard human military equipment, plasma cannons, fusion torpedoes, and kinetic rail guns. Against enemies this large, they would be like stinging insects. But humans had learned long ago that sometimes being an insect was exactly what you needed to be. We're going to try something. Tell your ships to target the Devourer harvesting arms, and when we give the signal, hit them with everything you have. Sarah turned to her crew. Martinez, load fusion torpedoes with proximity fuses. We're going for the joints where those harvesting arms connect to the main ships. Chief Engineer, I need you to push our engines past safety limits. We're going to have to get very close, very fast. The Chief Engineer's voice came through the comm. Commander, our engines weren't designed for combat maneuvers against ships that size. One hit from those energy beams and we're space dust. Then we'll have to make sure they don't hit us. Dr. Reeves, can you establish a data link with the... If their ships are alive, maybe they can coordinate with our computer systems. Within minutes, Dr. Reeves had established a crude communication link between the Intrepid's computers and the neural networks of the bioships. It was like watching 2 completely different forms of intelligence learn to dance together. Ready, Commander, Dr. Reeves reported. The ships are excited. They've never experienced digital thought patterns before. Sarah smiled grimly. Then let's show them how humans fight. The Intrepid dove toward the nearest Devourer ship, its hull screaming through the vacuum as it pushed beyond safe operational speeds. The massive alien machine turned to track this new threat, its harvesting beams swiveling like the head of some mechanical predator. But the ships moved with the Intrepid, their organic hulls flowing through space in patterns that confused the Devourer's targeting systems. They had learned from the human ship's digital thoughts, and now they moved with a new kind of purpose. Now, Sarah shouted. The Intrepid's fusion torpedoes streaked toward the joint where a massive harvesting arm connected to the Devourer's hull. At the same moment, a dozen ships focused their bioenergy weapons on the same point. The combination of human explosive force and alien bioenergy created a cascade failure that none of them had expected. The harvesting arm broke away from the main ship, spinning into space like a severed limb. Fluid that might have been mechanical blood sprayed from the wound, and for the first time, the seemingly invincible Devourer ship showed damage. A cheer went up on the Intrepid's bridge, echoed by harmonic songs from the fleet. They had hurt the enemy. But their celebration was short-lived. The damaged Devourer ship began to change, its hull flowing like liquid metal. Within minutes, it had sealed its wound and grown a new harvesting arm. Worse, all the Devourer ships in the system were now focusing their attention on the human vessel and its alien allies. Commander, Martinez said urgently, they're adapting. The other ships are reinforcing their weak points. Sarah felt a cold realization settle in her stomach. They had shown the enemy their tactics, and now the Devourers would be ready for them. The fight that had seemed hopeful moments before was about to become a slaughter. But as she watched the massive alien machines turning toward them, Sarah remembered something from Earth's history. Sometimes the smallest creatures could bring down the largest predators, not through single attacks, but through persistence and intelligence. Humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars by being stubborn and refusing to give up when any reasonable species would have run. All ships, we've hurt them once. Now we're going to hurt them again and again. and we're going to keep hurting them until they wish they'd never come to this system." The response came as a harmony of voices, their musical language now carrying notes of human determination mixed with their own alien hope. They had found allies in the darkness, and they were going to fight like humans. The real battle was about to begin, the art of impossible wars. The Devourer ships moved with mechanical precision, their massive hulls cutting through space like predators closing in on wounded prey. Sarah watched the tactical display as three of the giant machines converged on their position, their newly adapted hulls gleaming with what looked like additional armor plating. "Commander, we've got a problem," Martinez called out. "They're learning faster than we can adapt. Those hull modifications appeared in less than 10 minutes. Dr. Reeves looked up from her analysis station, her face pale. "The bioships are reporting something disturbing. They can sense the Devourer machines' thinking. These aren't just automated weapons. There's a controlling intelligence behind them, and it's studying our tactics in real time." Sarah felt the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. 200 human lives, countless refugees, and possibly the future of both species hung on whatever decision she made in the next few seconds. The logical choice was retreat, fight another day with better odds and proper backup. But as she watched another transport ship explode under Devourer fire, its bioluminescent death scream lighting up the darkness, Sarah knew that logic wasn't always enough. Sometimes you had to be willing to do something completely insane. "Chief, I need you to do something that will probably void our warranty." The engineer's voice crackled through the comm. "I'm listening, Commander." "Can you overload our fusion reactor and contain the explosion long enough for us to ram one of those machines?" The bridge fell silent. Martinez turned in his chair, his expression shocked. "Commander, ramming a ship that size would be suicide, and even if we took out one Devourer, there are dozens more." "I'm not planning to ram them," Sarah said, her mind racing through possibilities. "I'm planning to teach them about human stubbornness. Answer the question, can you do it?" "Theoretically, yes. But Commander, containing a fusion overload is like trying to hold a star in your hands. We'd have maybe 30 seconds before containment fails, and if we're not clear by then." 30 seconds, Sarah turned to Dr. Reeves. "Can the bioship survive in a star's corona?" Dr. Reeves blinked in confusion. What? Commander, their ships are organic. They'd be incinerated instantly." "But they're alive, right? They can think, adapt, evolve." "Yes, but evolution takes generations, not minutes." Sarah smiled grimly. "Doctor, you're thinking like a human. The bioships aren't just alive. They're connected to each other through some kind of neural network. Every ship that dies shares its knowledge with the survivors. They've been telling each other about the Devourer's weaknesses, but they haven't been sharing our human tactical knowledge." Understanding dawned on Dr. Reeves' face. "You want to upload our combat database directly into their network." "More than that, I want to upload human psychology, our capacity for sacrifice, our refusal to surrender, our ability to turn suicide missions into victory." Sarah's voice grew stronger as the plan formed. "The Devourers can adapt to our weapons, but can they adapt to the way we think?" The nearest Devourer ship was less than 1,000 kilometers away now, close enough that its hull details filled there. Sarah could see the microscopic repairs happening in real time, the adaptive metal learning from their earlier attack. "Harmony Singer," Sarah called over the comm. "We need to establish a deep neural link with your fleet. My ship is going to sacrifice itself, but before it does, I want to share something with your bioships." The response came immediately, harmonized voices singing in perfect unison. "Human friend Sarah, we do not understand. Why choose death?" "Because sometimes dying is how you win," Sarah replied. "Trust us, open your networks." Dr. Reeves worked frantically at her console, establishing data connections with bioship after bioship. The alien vessel's neural networks were incredibly complex, like organic computers that thought in symphonies rather than equations. "Commander's voice was tight with stress. "I need to start the overload sequence now if we're going to have enough power for what you're planning." "Do it, Martinez. Plot a course straight for that Devourer's main hull, full acceleration." The Intrepid's engines roared to life, pushing the exploration vessel far beyond safe operational limits. Behind them, Sarah could see the bioships following, their hulls beginning to glow as they absorbed the human combat data flowing through the neural links. The Devourer ship detected their approach and began firing massive energy beams that could have vaporized a small moon. But the Intrepid danced between the blasts, following evasion patterns that made no logical sense. Sarah was flying on pure human instinct, the kind of reckless courage that had driven her ancestors to cross oceans in wooden boats and challenge empires with improvised weapons. 20 seconds to containment failure, warned. Commander, if we don't break off now. Hold the course. Reeves, how's the data transfer? Incredible, Dr. Reeves breathed. The bioships are absorbing our tactical knowledge, but they're also learning our emotional patterns. Commander, they're starting to feel human anger. Sarah could see individual bioships beginning to change. Their elegant, flowing forms were developing harder edges, their bioluminescent displays shifting from gentle blues and greens to the harsh reds and oranges of human warning systems. The lead bioship suddenly broke formation and accelerated toward a different devourer, its organic hull rippling with new weapon systems that looked disturbingly like human military hardware grown from living tissue. When it fired, the energy blast wasn't the gentle flowering of light they'd seen before. It was a focused beam of pure destruction that punched through the Devourer's adaptive hull like a spear through paper. 10 seconds to containment failure, announced. The Intrepid was less than a kilometer from the Devourer's hull now, close enough that Sarah could see individual mechanical components moving beneath the adaptive surface. The alien machine was trying to repair the damage from the bioship's attack while simultaneously targeting the human vessel. 5 seconds. Sarah made her choice. Instead of ramming the Devourer, she pulled the Intrepid into a sharp turn that brought them alongside the massive machine's hull. Release containment now. The overloaded fusion reactor erupted in a miniature star, but instead of destroying the Intrepid, the explosion was channeled through the ship's hull and into the Devourer's adaptive armor. For a moment, the alien machine was bathed in the same nuclear fire that powered Earth's sun. But Sarah had planned for this. The Intrepid's hull had been modified during their approach, its outer plating reconfigured to act as a directed explosive. The fusion blast wasn't meant to destroy the Devourer. It was meant to superheat the adaptive metal and make it vulnerable to the bioship's attacks. The plan worked better than Sarah had dared to hope. The Devourer's hull began to bubble and flow, its adaptive properties overloaded by the intense heat. And into that moment of vulnerability came the fleet, their bioships now armed with weapons that combined alien biotechnology with human ruthlessness. The attacking bioships had grown new organs specifically designed to exploit the superheated hull. They fired concentrated bursts of what Dr. Reeves would later identify as weaponized cancer-living organisms that consumed metal and converted it into more weapons. The Devourer ship began to dissolve from the inside out, its perfect mechanical systems corrupted by alien biology guided by human tactical thinking. Other Devourer machines moved to assist, but they faced a problem they had never encountered before. The bioships were no longer fighting like the peaceful, harmony-loving species they had been. They had absorbed something fundamentally human, the ability to be absolutely vicious when protecting something they loved. Every bioship that was destroyed shared its death experience with the fleet, and instead of discouraging them, it only made them angrier. Sarah watched from the Intrepid's emergency bridge as the battle turned into something that would have been impossible an hour before. The bioships were evolving in real time, growing new weapons and defensive systems based on human military principles. They had learned to fight dirty. One bioship had grown what looked like organic missile launchers and was firing living projectiles that burrowed into Devourer hulls before exploding. Another had developed something resembling a biokinetic cannon that hurled chunks of its own mass at incredible velocities, regenerating the lost tissue from consumed enemy material. But the most disturbing change was in their tactics. They had learned human concepts like deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare. Bioships that appeared dead would suddenly spring back to life and attack from unexpected angles. They had started communicating false surrender signals, then overwhelming Devourer ships that moved in to finish them off. "Commander," Martinez called out, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the outer system. More Devourer ships are jumping and looks like this is their main fleet." Sarah felt her heart sink. They had been winning against the advanced ships, But if this was just the beginning of the invasion force, then everything they had accomplished might be meaningless. That's when Dr. Reeves made a discovery that changed everything. Commander, the bioships aren't just learning our tactics. They're communicating with bioships in other systems through some kind of quantum entanglement network. Every adaptation they make here is being shared instantly with fleets across the galaxy. Sarah stared at the readout. How many other systems are there? At least 40 that I can detect. Commander, we haven't just taught one fleet how to fight. We've taught an entire species. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Across the galaxy, wherever Devourer machines were attacking peaceful worlds, the bioships were suddenly developing human-style weapons and tactics. The machine intelligence that controlled the Devourers was probably receiving damage reports from dozens of systems simultaneously, all showing the same impossible thing. Their victims had learned to fight back. Harmony Singer, Sarah called over the comm. Your people need to coordinate with other systems. Share everything you've learned about the Devourer's weaknesses. The reply came as a harmony of voices, but now they carried undertones that sounded almost human. Human friend Sarah, we are already sharing. The song of war spreads to all our worlds. The Devourers face something they have never encountered before. Sarah looked out at the battle raging around them and realized that they had done something unprecedented. They had taken a peaceful species and taught them not just how to fight, but how to fight like humans. They were spreading that knowledge across interstellar distances in real time, turning every battle into a learning experience for their entire species. The Devourer machines had spent eons perfecting their tactics against civilizations that fought conventionally. But they had never faced an enemy that could evolve from pacifist to predator in the span of a single battle, guided by the strategic thinking of a species that had spent perfecting the art of war. As more Devourer ships emerged from hyperspace, Sarah saw something that filled her with fierce pride. The bioships were moving to intercept them, but they weren't flying in the graceful, harmonious formations of before. They were moving in the aggressive, chaotic patterns of human fighter squadrons, ready to teach these new arrivals what they had learned about the price of threatening someone's home. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the distress signal had reached human space, Sarah believed they might actually win. The price of teaching war. 3 hours after the first Devourer reinforcements arrived, the drift had become a graveyard of impossible victories. Shattered machine hulls drifted alongside the organic remains of bioships that had given everything to protect their worlds. The space between planets glowed with the dying light of weapons that shouldn't have been able to penetrate adaptive armor, wielded by a species that had been pacifist just days before. Sarah stood on the Intrepid's damaged bridge, watching tactical displays that painted a picture both triumphant and terrifying. They had won their system back, but the cost had been written in the fundamental nature of their species. Dr. Reeves looked up from her monitoring station, her expression troubled. Commander, I'm reading significant biological changes in the surviving bioships. The neural networks that used to process harmony and cooperation are now optimized for tactical analysis and threat assessment. Are you saying we've changed them permanently? More than that, the bioships aren't just thinking like humans now, they're breeding like us too. They're producing new generations of ships specifically designed for war, and they're doing it at an accelerated rate. I'm detecting bioships that went from conception to combat-ready in less than 2 hours. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the damaged environmental systems. Show me. On the main screen, a cluster of newly grown bioships hung in space near the largest world. They looked nothing like the elegant, flowing vessels that had first responded to the Intrepid's arrival. These new ships were armored predators, their hulls bristling with weapons that merged human military technology with alien biotechnology in ways that made Sarah's skin crawl. One of the new bioships intercepted a piece of Devourer wreckage and began consuming it, its hull rippling as it incorporated the alien materials into new weapon systems. Within minutes, it had grown what appeared to be adaptive armor of its own. But where the Devourer technology had been coldly efficient, this version pulsed with organic life. They're not just learning from us, Dr. Reeves whispered. They're learning from the enemy too. Harmony Singer's voice came through the comm, but the melodic quality was gone, replaced by something that sounded disturbingly familiar to anyone who had listened to human military communications. Human friend Sarah, we have received communications from our fleets in 47 systems. The Devourers are retreating. For the first time in their recorded history, they are abandoning worlds before consuming them. Sarah should have felt victorious, but something in's tone made her pause. What's the status of your civilian populations? There was a long pause before replied. Our civilians are adapting, the young ones especially. They hear the song of war in our neural networks and they are changing to match it. Our children are being born with organs designed for combat, Commander. We have become something we never intended to be. The implications of what they had done began to sink in. Sarah had thought they were saving a species from extinction, but instead they had fundamentally altered what that species was. They were evolving away from their peaceful nature at a rate that biological possibility, guided by the tactical knowledge and aggressive instincts of humanity. Dr. Reeves, are they in danger of losing themselves completely? Before she could answer, Lieutenant Martinez called out from his station. Commander, I'm picking up massive energy signatures from beyond the system. Something big is coming through hyperspace. Sarah turned back to the tactical display, expecting to see more Devourer reinforcements. Instead, what emerged from hyperspace was unlike anything in their databases. The ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the largest Devourer machine, but it wasn't built, it was grown. The hull had the flowing, organic appearance of biotechnology, but it pulsed with power levels that dwarfed anything they had seen. Commander, Dr. Reeves said, her voice barely above a whisper, I'm reading neural activity from that ship that's off the charts. It's not just alive, it's thinking at a level that approaches artificial intelligence, but it's completely organic. The massive bioship opened communications, and when it spoke, the voice was harmonious like the old transmissions, but underneath the melody was something that sounded like barely contained violence. I am Deep Singer and War Shaper of the Rapid Evolution Fleet. We have come to thank the humans who taught us the song of war and to share what we have learned. Sarah exchanged glances with her bridge crew. Evolution Fleet, what is he talking about? His response came through a different channel, and for the first time since they had arrived in the system, her voice carried traces of fear. Commander, some of our people have embraced the changes completely. They have grown ships like N's vessel, designed not just for defense, but for taking the war to the Devourers wherever they may be. Warshaper Sarah, N's voice filled the bridge. Your species has given us a gift beyond measure. You have shown us that survival sometimes requires becoming something terrible and beautiful. We wish to return this gift. What kind of gift? Sarah asked, though she was beginning to suspect she wouldn't like the answer. In response, the massive bioship began to change. Its hull opened like a flower, revealing internal chambers that understanding. Inside, Sarah could see what looked like construction bays, but instead of building ships, they were growing them. Hundreds of vessels that looked disturbingly familiar were taking shape in the organic factories. And his growing human-style warships, Dr. Reeves said, her voice filled with wonder and horror. But they're alive, conscious beings designed specifically for war. The implications were staggering. They hadn't just learned human military tactics. They had learned human shipbuilding concepts and improved them with their biotechnology. They were creating fleets of living warships that combined human strategic thinking with alien biological advantages. Commander, and continued, we offer these ships to humanity along with our biological expertise. Together, our species can ensure that no civilization will ever again face extinction at the hands of the Devourers or others like them. Sarah stared at the display showing dozens of hybrid bioships taking shape in the alien factory. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, clearly designed by minds that understood both the art of war and the science of creating life. Each ship would be a living being with human tactical knowledge and biological capabilities. But Sarah found herself thinking about the price they had already paid. In saving them from extinction, they had turned a peaceful species into something designed for war. Now those same were offering to help humanity become more efficient at violence. Dr. Reeves, what are your thoughts on this? They looked at her readings with a mixture of scientific fascination and moral uncertainty. From a purely practical standpoint, these hybrid ships would make humanity nearly invincible in space combat. The biological technology could revolutionize everything from healing to exploration. And from a less practical standpoint, Dr. Reeves met her eyes. We'd be accepting weapons of living destruction from a species we taught how to make war. And if history is any guide, Weapons like these don't stay pointed at your enemies forever. Sarah turned back to the communication channel. War Shaper N, we're honored by your offer, but we need to understand something first. Are they still the people who sent out that first distress call, the ones who valued harmony and cooperation above all else? There was a long pause before N replied, and when he did, his voice carried a sadness that transcended species. We remember who we were, human friend Sarah, but memory and reality are not the same thing. We are what we had to become to survive. The question is not whether we are still the same people, the question is whether the galaxy is safer because we changed. The answer to that question became clear over the next several hours as reports came in from across the galaxy. In system after system, Devourer fleets were not just retreating. They were being actively hunted by evolution fleets. The machines that had once seemed unstoppable were being systematically destroyed by living ships that adapted faster than their mechanical programming could compensate for. But they weren't stopping with the Devourers. In some systems, they were taking aggressive action against other threats: pirate fleets, slave traders, and aggressive species that preyed on weaker civilizations. The galaxy's balance of power was shifting, and it was shifting toward a species that humanity had inadvertently turned into the ultimate predators. "Commander," Martinez reported, "I'm getting communications from Earth Command. They've been monitoring our transmissions, and they're requesting immediate debriefing on what they're calling the most significant first contact event in human history." Sarah looked out at the ships surrounding them, some still recognizably the flowing, peaceful vessels they had first encountered, others transformed into living weapons of unimaginable sophistication. In the distance, N's massive factory ship continued growing new hybrid vessels that represented a fusion of human military thinking and alien biological mastery. They had answered a distress call from a dying civilization and saved them from extinction. But in doing so, they had created something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that combined the tactical ruthlessness of humanity with biological capabilities that bordered on miraculous. "Send a message to Earth Command," Sarah said finally. "Tell them we've successfully established contact with an alien civilization, and we've offered them our assistance in defending themselves against a mutual threat." "Should I mention the part where we accidentally turned them into the galaxy's apex predators?" Martinez asked. Sarah considered the question seriously. "No, let's save that for the in-person debriefing. Something tells me this conversation is going to be complicated enough as it is." As the Intrepid prepared to leave the drift, Sarah took one last look at the system they had helped save. The planets were healing, their surfaces showing the first signs of biological recovery as bioships seeded them with engineered organisms designed to repair the damage. It was beautiful and efficient, and completely unlike anything the old would have done. They had saved a civilization, but they had also changed the fundamental nature of the galaxy itself. The question now was whether humanity was ready to live in a universe where their new allies were even better at war than they were. The answer to that question would determine whether their greatest act of compassion would ultimately be remembered as humanity's finest hour, or the moment when they unleashed something that would forever alter the balance between peace and survival among the stars.